Okay, so what we have going on here is you have this thing that I had you put in your notebook in class, and it has three parts. The top one is standard form. And so if you open up the fold on standard form, you'll see what I have here on the left-hand side. And so what's going on with standard form is you have this equation, y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. There's no bubbles. It's what we've been working on actually in class, and you actually know how to do this. This is all review. You find your axis of symmetry using negative b over 2a. You find your vertex, which means you take what you have here and plug it in the equation, and you find 4 more points. Really, you just find 2 and reflect, right? So we've done this. So on the right-hand side, you'll have this, and you need to take notes on the right-hand side as we do this. And so we first start by writing down what we have for a, b, and c on our equations. So you see we have our equation right here. So our a value, remember our a value is what's in front of x squared, and there's nothing there, so it's really just a 1. So we have a is 1. B is the number in front of x, so b is 4. And c is that constant, which is negative 3. Make sure you include your negatives and all that good stuff. Axis of symmetry, we find that by going negative b over 2a. So make sure you're writing this on yours. And that would be negative. B is 4, and a is 1. So we have negative 4 over 2, which gives us negative 2. So our axis of symmetry is x equals negative 2. And what that means for the graph is, sorry, I know mine's kind of blurry, but for the graph that means we have this axis of symmetry at negative 2. Okay, and then that also means that our vertex, we plug in negative 2 for the x value there on our vertex, and we still have to find our y values, so we're going to plug in negative 2 in for the x, so we get y equals, and plug in negative 2, square it, plus 4 times negative 2, minus 3, and we get y equals negative 2 squared, that's going to be a positive 4. 4 times negative 2 is minus 8, minus 3, and what do we get? Negative 7. So then we graph our point, which happens to be way down here on the bottom. Now, this isn't really necessarily just about graphing. It was just about, the different forms that you can look at a quadratic in, and this one is just the standard basic form. And so just to give us a little bit more of a graph, we can also talk about, we've talked about this in class, how our c value is our y-intercept. So we can go ahead and graph that point, and then we reflect it to the other side. And normally I tell you to give me 5 points, but right now, like I said, we're not really worried about graphing right now. We're just talking about the forms of a line. So we'll go ahead and just draw these in. Okay, so that is your very first flap over. So, oh, I forgot to write in my vertex, right? Vertex, we got negative 7 for the y value. So make sure that you've copied down all the notes, and yours looks pretty much like mine. Hopefully, maybe even a little bit better than mine, since you're drawing on paper and I have this wonderful iPad to write on. All right, so then we go to the second flap. So then we go on to our next form, and our next form is called the vertex form. If you look at it, you should have seen this on Desmos as we worked on it, but as you look at it, you still got the y and you still got the x, but now stuff is going on with this x. We've got a bubble. The bubble's being squared. By the way, you can't just distribute the squared. You've got a number in front, and you've got a plus k at the end, which, by the way, is not c. It's not your y-intercept, so it doesn't work out quite that cool. But on Desmos, hopefully what you realized was on your vertex, the x value is h. Now, if you look here, it says minus h, and we just have a positive h here, which means what you do is you have to change the sign of h when you write down your x value. And then your y value is k, which is right here at the end. So if we look at our example on the right-hand side of this, so we're on the second fold. If you look at your example on the right-hand side, my vertex, the x value comes from here. Now this says negative 3, so remember we have to switch the sign, so it's a positive 3. And then the y value is this last number here, which is negative 1. We keep that the same. So we can graph that point 3, negative 1 over here on the graph. So hopefully you're writing down what I'm writing down. And if you remember before, when we're finding the axis of symmetry, we use that x equals negative b over 2a. We don't have to do that here. Number one, we don't see the b and a, so we're not going to do that. But remember, axis of symmetry is always on the vertex, right? So we're going to have an axis of symmetry going through the vertex here. Go ahead and draw that out. And so that means that the axis of symmetry is right where the x value is, which is 3. So the axis of symmetry is x equals 3. You can easily just write that down. Now this one's a little bit different. Again, I'm not talking about graphing here. We're just kind of looking at the specifics of what's going on. The only thing I'm going to really have us do, this is going to be a parabola that opens up, and it's going to be kind of skinny, and we're going to talk about that tomorrow. It's going to be kind of skinny, so go ahead and just draw in a quick parabola here, making sure that your vertex here is 3, -1, and that it's going up. So that's vertex form. Once again, you can just see the axis, the vertex, and then the axis of symmetry, of course, follows along with that. And then you have your third fold. Now your third fold is called the intercept form. See, we care about x-intercepts when we're graphing and when we're looking at parabolas a lot. We really, really care about them. And so this is really cool because it tells us our intercepts. See, what it is this side we have, this one is an intercept and this one is an intercept. And you know what? I'm not sharing with how that works. We're actually going to learn how that works later. But for now, we're just identifying it. Okay? And so P and Q, notice the signs are changed. See, P is an intercept, but up here I have a negative P, so we have to switch the sign. Same thing with Q. Q is an intercept, but we have to switch it. So if you look over on the right-hand side, we have an example there. And so if I look at the this right here, this is telling me that -1 is an x-intercept. So I can put -1 in that spot. And this one right here is telling me the +3. Remember, I'm switching the sign, is an intercept. So I can put x-intercepts. So that means I'm crossing the x-axis, I'm crossing it at -1, and I'm crossing it at a +3. So that's kind of cool. I can see where my intercepts are. I can also figure out the axis of symmetry because remember, that's going to be smack dab in the middle. So if I look here, if I count 1, 2, 3, 4, then my axis of symmetry is going to be halfway, right? Middle is halfway. So 1, 2. So that's going to be my axis of symmetry. So put in my axis of symmetry here. You guys are doing this on yours, right? And if you really want, you can even find your vertex, because the whole point of vertex is if you know your x value, you plug it in, and it'll find your y value for you. So we can plug in, let's see, that ended up at 1, so I can plug in 1 here, and I can plug in 1 here. So what we have then, by the way, axis of symmetry is x equals 1, right? If I plug in 1, I get 2 times, let's see, 1 plus 1, and then 1 minus 3. So I get 2 times 2 times -2, and if I multiply those out, I get -8. So if I look at that, let's see, the bottom of this graph is -7, so go down about 1 more, and there's -8, and I can sketch in my parabola real quick. So the reason I'm showing you this is not that you have to have this memorized. In fact, I have you do this foldable because I want you to be able to use it, okay? So you have this glued into your notebook. I want you to be able to use it and be able to look at it and find these things if you ever need them. But I'm not asking you to memorize it. It's okay if you don't memorize this. I just want you to be able to use it.